Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Tamara and I am a flower farmer in southern Wisconsin. We're zone 5A and we run P Street Flower Farm. 50 or 60 new subscribers in the past couple days. Super cool. I'm super grateful. Yeah, it's just for a small channel like mine that's just getting started. It's super exciting and I'm so grateful for all the positive comments and the information that everyone's sharing. I just love it. So thank you so much for being here. Behind me is some grid paper with a lot of stuff scribbled on it. And that is my way of organizing my mind, especially with growing flowers. I'm very new to this. I don't know really anything about gardening. Lots of hard lessons learned last year. So I'm gonna show you what I've got behind me. Let's get into it. We have 70-foot beds that run north and south, and then we've got a few more beds that are gonna run east and west. They're a little bit shorter, and the reason for that is that our property is on a slope, and so we really can't run the beds another 70 feet up the slope. So we've decided to just turn them the opposite direction, and I think they'll do just fine. Our biggest problem with this property is that we have really huge trees on the west corner, and so as the sun's setting, trees cast a really long shadow, and so I tried to keep that in mind when I was putting what flowers go where, because we just get so much shade, and as we get further and further into the summer and into early fall, that shade gets longer and earlier. And so we really wanted to be cognizant of what plants we were putting there. We wanted to put things that could kind of tolerate a little bit of shade. We were also more cognizant of the perennial plants that we were putting in. So delphinium, veronica, pampas grass, anise. We put that closer to the fence line because we just didn't think that it made sense to put them in the middle of the field. We also tried to group like things together, so both rows of lisianthus together and rows of zinnias together. It didn't always work out. The dahlias are a little bit separated, and if we happened to flip a bed, that also kind of made it hard to keep things together. But for the most part, we tried to keep all the varieties together. The beds that we're gonna flip are actually within, so there's a small bit of our farm that is enclosed. When we moved in, the woman who was here before was an avid gardener, and she had put up a really, decent enough fence, and it does a pretty good job of keeping the animals out. We do have a lot of rabbits, and we have a lot of deer that kind of sneak up now and again. So I wanted to keep all stuff that's a little bit more deer resistant outside of the fence, and I was just a little bit more conscious of that. But of course, I'm sure there's things that every animal out in our property is gonna munch on. We live right on a wooded trail. Else we do get a lot of creatures, and so I guess we'll just deal with that if we have any issues later next year. All the beds that we are flipping are within the fence. I don't know why I did that, because it would surely be easier to flip them outside of the fence, because our beds run super close to the fence line, so it's hard to get buckets in and out, and it's just kind of a pain to be dragging the fabric in and around and over the fence, and the fence is kind of old and things catch on it all the time. So I don't know, that was probably not the brightest thing, but it is what it is. We've already spent so much time planning where everything's gonna go and which beds are gonna be flipped and what things are gonna go into those beds, that to me, it's just not worth it to reconfigure everything. I also tried to keep things that were the same spacing, obviously in the same rows, and I tried to keep things that required like the same netting or corralling together. To me, just visually, I feel like that looks better. We didn't do that last year. We struggled a little bit. It was really hard. We learned a lot of lessons, but I think visually this year, it just looks better to have all the things netted together, all the things corralled together, all the vining things together, and all the trellising things together. So that's what we've kind of based our design on this year. So really that's it for the layout of the farm. It's pretty simple, just keeping a lot of things in mind, which way our beds are running, where the sun is rising and setting, which things are gonna get a little bit of shade and which things are gonna stay in full sun based on what we've got growing around our property. Trying to keep the perennials close to the fence and not putting them right in the middle of the field, and running our beds in a direction that makes sense for the way our property is laid out. Behind me is a mess, I'm sure to most people, but for me, it's not overwhelming. It's super organized, and I really like the way that it looks. I like things to be in my face. I like them to be big, and I like them to be in a place where I can access them easily. I am not somebody who is very comfortable like on the computer and with technology, and for me, Paper to pen, so much easier. I'm not the type of person that's gonna sit down, open my computer, open up an application and try to find a file and then put notes in it every single time something pops into my brain or I remember something or I want to transfer something from this notebook. So I'll go over the seed sowing schedule, how I have it here, and maybe it will be helpful. I don't know, something to do in the winter months when it's cold. I will eventually transfer once this is all filled out. I've got some other growing notes and things that I'll put here throughout the season. Once this is all filled, then I will put it into an Excel sheet and I'll be able to reference it year after year and I can find patterns and similarities and things that worked and things that didn't so that I can help increase my proficiency and productivity over the years. But for the season wise, I like having this here. In the first column, I have the names of all of the things that I'm growing. And then right next to that, obviously would be the variety of each thing. I'm growing a lot of different varieties because I just don't know what I like in terms of visually, how it's gonna hold up in a market bouquet, how it's gonna grow here in our zone, all of that stuff. So I am growing lots of different varieties and I'm really excited to just be taking really detailed notes and paying attention to what it's doing in the field, how much water it requires, is it a heavy feeder, is it something that I wanna deal with, is it finicky, all of that stuff. So that's why I have so many varieties. And then days to germinate, important piece because a lot of times in the seed packets, they'll say start 4 to 6 weeks or 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost, but I don't think that includes the germination time. There's things on here like bupleurum. Okay, they need a couple of weeks to freeze and then they take 2 or 3 weeks to germinate. Well, that's already 4 to 5 weeks before the seed even germinates. So there's notes like that that you need to take into consideration. The other thing that I have on here is the date that I'm gonna sow everything. So to me, just being mindful of, I can't start all of my seeds at the same time, just like I can't put them in the field all at the same time. It's just me. And sometimes my husband, we just don't have the labor or the time to put all the things in all at once. So we have to be thinking about, okay, when are we gonna sow this? The quantity, that's just how many seeds are in the packet. And I know that seems kind of simple, but I have learned that the hard way when I thought, okay, I'm gonna sow 7 72 plug trays because that's about what it takes to fill up one 70-foot bed that has a 9x9 spacing. And I'm gonna put 7 different packs of zinnias. And I assumed each of the packs of zinnias had 100 seeds. Well, some of them had 25, some of them had 20, some of them had 50. And so I was really, really short. So for me, having that information of how many seeds are in a packet is really important because then I can make sure that I'm having enough seeds to fill up a tray and therefore enough seeds to fill up a bed. And then I put in what cell tray I'm using. For me, that's kind of important because I want to be as efficient as I can be. So if I'm using a 1/28 cell tray and I notice that there's a lot of wiggle room after that seedling is, you know, however big it needs to be, maybe I want to bump that down to a 288 and save on space and still get a really great plant out of that. Or if I'm noticing that it's struggling or it's getting too big, maybe I want to bump that up to a 72. So I want to be as efficient as possible. When is it going in the field? Another important piece of information, it's going to tell me these plants need to get in the field. They've been in their cell trays for long enough. And it's also going to help me stagger when I'm putting things out into the field because, again, just my husband and we just don't have all the time in the world. We have no employees, so we need to make sure that we're not trying to plant everything on the same day or the same weekend. It's just not feasible. Spacing, obviously, I like to have that in my mind. The more I see it and I associate it with a plant, the more I'm gonna have that come to me right away. I put all the 9x9s together, 12x12, 6x6, and I think I even have 18x18 for the eucalyptus and mahogany splendor, things like that. I like to put all the things that are gonna be netted together, corralled together, vining together. Again, that just makes sense. And then pinching information, whether or not I should pinch it. I mean, does the plant prefer that or will it be just fine without pinching? And then I have some information about whether or not I'm gonna flip the bed, and that's just kind of to keep me on track. And then so other notes about how this plant grows. Do I need to multi-seed it? Is it gonna go in a caterpillar tunnel? Do I need to put it in the freezer? Do I need to soak the seeds? Things like that. I also like having this big visual piece here because other people can help out and I don't have to repeat myself over and over and over if I have some family help out or if I for at some point get an employee. There's a nice big visual reference that's really easy to read, that anyone can get information from. The last thing I'm going to use is this planner, and I think it's going to be super helpful to get more detailed information that can't fit on here into here. It's portable. I can take it out every single day, write notes on it. I can also put all of this information into here. So, okay, this week I'm going to be doing this and this. This week I'm going to be doing this and this. This has a to-do spot and notes, and then all of that can go into some sort of Microsoft Word thing for future reference, but this is a nice portable version of this and more detailed as well. And the grid paper that I used is this one. I will try to link it below if I can. I just got this one from Staples. It is 17 inches by 22. It's got these really great little squares, and you can obviously make every square whatever distance you need so that you can get a really, really accurate idea of what kind of space you're working with and how you want to use it. So that is it on layout and planning. I don't know if that was helpful. I don't know if anyone else has a brain like mine. Maybe this is just a mess to most people, but for me, it is going to be super helpful to have something to reference. I just need something to reference, especially when things get really busy and you feel like you're kind of spiraling out of control, which happens to me often. I'd like to have a place that I can just rein myself back in and just say, hey, we're on this week, let's do these things. So anyways, that's it. This is probably the last video of 2022. I'm so grateful for everyone who is here and following along. Thank you so much, and we will see you in 2023. Happy New Year.